Eccoci, questa è un'altra
Good
prova.
evening,
Le trascrizioni.
ladies and gentlemen. Le trascrizioni le cose le vanno fatte.
Le vanno fatte per
Soprattutto
benino.
al principio. Anche dopo, ma al principio di più.
Hello everyone, this is Mirko Guerrini and I welcome you to the Jazz Transcription Clinic, a monthly interviews podcast where we talk with accomplished jazz doctors about their lives, career and their personal secrets on the art of transcribing. If you want to improve at jazz, stay tuned and follow the Jazz Transcription Clinic on the socials for more content. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast is being recorded. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and the Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Jazz Transcription Clinic Podcast. I'm still in Italy, it's still cold, it's end of January, and I'm here with a super good friend of mine. We shared a lot of studies together, initially with classical saxophone. He was already 79 years old when you started studying classical saxophone.
No,
I was only
older.
14.
No, I was older. I was
okay.
22 years old. And you were 14.
I was 14. And then we decided to study together also jazz music. So we went back to school when we were adults at the Conservatorium in Florence, and we got the degree in jazz. It was quite a fun adventure, and it's a pleasure today to share this episode with this good friend, Dario Cecchini.
Hello everybody. Hello, grazie Mirko. Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here because I watched several of your appointments, and so I'm very glad to talk with you about my experience.
Yeah, and Dario will be the guest doctor for today's episode, and Dario is also the leader of the world acclaimed marching band named Funkoff. And Dario came to Melbourne to play. The first time I came in Melbourne, because in 2005 the Umbria Jazz Festival, which is the biggest jazz festival in Italy, organized a co-producted festival together with the Melbourne International Jazz Festival. So I came in 2005 playing with Stefano Bollani and his quintet, and Dario Cecchini came with his famous band Funkoff. You need to check that band out. They have recorded and released several albums, and they play heaps of concerts. It's the funkiest band in Italy. And also I remember in Melbourne I got inducted with the funk from...
Yes.
I remember I was walking in a street and I started feeling this vibe coming and calling me. I received a call and you were playing with your band and you started feeling that in the audience there was someone who could receive
the gift of the god of funk.
And I got inducted, and all of a sudden I was playing with your band in front of the microphone. And
we do several with some friends. We do it. We get the installation of funk in some friends.
Maybe I should. I think I got weakened with 20 years. So probably I should get a new induction.
I
don't know if I'm entitled.
I feel you need it.
So we can organize something.
Yes.
And of course, as usual, all the links to Dario's music and his websites and his presence on the web will be added to the video description. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, because that motivates me to keep running and create new content for you guys. And let's start. This podcast and this clinic is all about transcriptions, as you know. So, Dario, why do you transcribe?
I transcribe to try to steal and to learn stuff from other musicians. But you know, music is stealing. You steal from all the previous musicians. You learn from them, and it is very important to understand. It's easier to understand something if you heard it played by someone else. So it's very easy. I remember the very first transcription I did. I was young. I was very young. Probably I was neither studying music at the time, and I tried to transcribe J.J. Johnson. J.J. Johnson, because I like the trombone. And when I started playing, I was a drummer player, but I wanted to play the trombone. But then my life, I started studying saxophone. But I started transcribing J.J. Johnson, and then I transcribed Clifford Brown, the second one. And then I transcribed Sonny Rollins. But
all the easy ones.
not easy ones. But I was immature at that time. So for me, I didn't know actually how to make it, because I liked that solos, and I tried to transcribe, but I wasn't prepared to learn. My level was too low.
Yeah.
And I transcribed, I played barely. I could make it, but I didn't learn anything. When I was a bit older, I started transcribing. I met this great baritone saxophone player, that was the great Nick Brignol.
Yeah.
Brignola in Italian. Brignol. I heard they call it Brignol. And I learned a lot of things from him. Yeah. And it was my first love in transcription.
So I forgot to mention that Dario, among being a band leader, he's also a specialist with the baritone saxophone.
Yeah.
And he's recognized as one of the best in Europe to play that instrument. And of course, he's playing all the other saxophones and bass clarinets, flutes.
No, clarinet, no, I don't play the clarinet. I'm very bad.
But you can.
I can, but I'm very bad. So, I learned a lot of things from Pepper Adams. Nick Brignol. At that time, was my model. I remember how I learned the sound of the altered ninth. I have to say thank to Nick Brignol. Not the study, not the explication. I heard
not Jimi
Hendrix. I heard that sound. I learned it.
Yeah.
By him, from him.
Yeah. So, but just because I'm curious, and I'm pretty sure our audience is too. Were you somebody told you to transcribe, or you heard that people were transcribing, or it was just I want to learn
we
this?
We were talking about I'm also almost 60 years old, okay? So at that time, when I was 20 years old, when I didn't study music, it was something that I felt in myself.
Yeah.
I said I like that the solo of that J.J. Johnson solo. I wanted to try to play like him. So the first thing was to probably, if I could go back, probably I would try not to write it, but only to learn it with the saxophone. So by heart, you know.
Yeah, it was just an intuition.
It was an intuition
of yours,
because I didn't study jazz at that time with anybody, and at that time I didn't study music. Yeah. I played here in the band of the town with my parents, with my dad, with my uncle, with my friends. So I started doing it.
So it's right the case of saying that you started with the right foot.
Yeah, but yes, because I grew up in a family of jazz amateurs.
Yeah.
Jazz, the music I heard in my house was jazz music. So I had this feeling. For instance, I remember how I learned to play the 4/4 on the drums. There is a disc at that time. It was Jerry Mulligan Quartet. And I learned how to, with Bob Brookmeyer, Frank Isola on the drums and the bass, I can't remember now, but I learned the 4/4, there was pa-pa-da-pa-da-pa-da, boom, boom, tss, pa-pa-pa. For me, that boom, boom, I had to learn it. And I learned this thing on the drums playing with CDs. So my first relationship was with the discs, and I had this idea to try to transcribe.
And I guess we will talk a little bit more about it, but I guess that goes with the fact that sometimes it's better to transcribe what we really like.
Yes, definitely.
Because it makes it a bit easier, or if not easier, it gives you the power to keep trying, to keep going. Because that boom boom probably resonated in some ways with you, and you wanted to be able to do that boom boom.
To do it, to understand how it worked, how was on the time.
Yeah.
Because I probably in my spirit, I'm in love with the groove, with the time. And when I say groove, I'm not talking about funk. I'm talking about groove.
Yeah.
Groove is in jazz. Groove is in soul music. Groove is everywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm in love with groove. In fact, there I'm playing the more groovy of the saxophone. If you want, the baritones is the more rhythmic, probably.
Yeah. And what do you expect to learn from a transcription? So now that you are an established jazz player, what
now
you aiming? What is?
I want to learn from the transcription the way the musician I'm transcribing is on the time, and this is very difficult. And the way he chooses the notes, the flavor. When you said it's better if you transcribe music you like, I transcribe only music I like, something that put me up. Huh?
Yeah. So
and this is all when I have to with my students. I very rarely I said I think you should. Sometimes I say, I think you should transcribe this because of the time, because of the notes, because of the sound. Yes, but very generally I say, what do you like? What would you like to transcribe? Who would you? Very often the question is, who do you like to transcribe?
Yeah.
What and maybe some specific song of him.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's also the
or her.
Or her, him or her, yes, because is the fact that you like sometimes you like some song, and you like how this musician played on this song.
Yeah,
both
absolutely.
Old song, both and new song.
Yeah. I also forgot to mention that Dario is the head of the jazz department at the Conservatorio in Florence. And so he has a very long experience as a jazz educator. So all those questions probably would lead into 24 hours chat about how we teach.
I like chatting.
Yeah, how we teach jazz. But while you were talking now, I was thinking that sometimes it could be possible to teach by just recommending artists to be transcribed. So if you identify that a student's problem is, I don't know, timing, you can say, transcribe this artist, transcribe
Sonny
this.
Rollins, for instance, a great machine, or very difficult, because Sonny Rollins sometimes can be quite easy technically.
Yeah.
But for instance, Chris Potter. Chris Potter is a machine of rhythm.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Incredible.
His timing is incredible. There is that famous transcription of he was at a workshop and he played All the Things You Are alone for like 12 minutes.
Yes, I've seen it.
And he doesn't drop a quaver in 12 minutes playing alone.
Yes,
it's absolutely also, nerve-wracking, because you listen and you understand that it's impossible to get to that level unless you do hours and hours and hours, years of study in that specific region. But yes, because we take that music is a language. So as I mentioned many times in this podcast, to learn a language, the best way is to learn from the people who speak that language. So you can get not only the notes, which is just one small detail, but all the rest that makes an artist sounding how it sounds. And is there a specific way now or in the past that makes you choosing a specific solo that you want to transcribe? Like, I don't know, sometimes it can be for some guests that we hosted in the past, they say, I don't know, I hear a phrase, a line, and then it happened that I transcribed the whole solo. Or, as you said, you want to dig a little bit deeper into a specific aspect of the playing.
The first thing to me is that, music is communication. Very often, in my opinion, the music has to be communication, has to communicate. Maybe some solo is more, it communicates more for me. Maybe something that attracts me. This is the first thing. So generally, I never started from a phrase and then I decided after the phrase to transcribe the solo. Is the feeling of the solo now. At the beginning, I think I was choosing something that I liked, but I didn't understand. So I said, okay, I have to go deep in his mind to understand that. That's why I say stealing stuff, because we are stealing from all the previous musicians and contemporary.
Yeah.
Did I reply?
Yes, totally, 100%. And do you have a specific methodology? So can you explain to us how you do it from zero, from when you start to when you decide that you are done?
Now I think the best way to learn it is first thing, and now I know it. At the beginning, I didn't know it. I realized that the first thing is to sing. And when I say to sing, I say singing. I mean, I'm not a singer, unfortunately, because I would like to be a singer. But since I'm not a singer, I don't have to be perfectly in tune. I have to sing in my brain, and also with words. If something is sharp or not, it's okay as well. So first thing, sing the solo. Second thing, the best thing, I have to admit, the best thing would be to learn it by heart immediately. and then write it down. In my opinion, it's important also to write it down.
Yeah. I made a video where one recommendation for the best transcribing tips was actually to sing and to memorize. So check the link of the video that will appear in a second on the top of the video, and you can also watch that.
But I have to be sincere. This is not the way I made. Because my step is unfortunately my personal step. Even if I say to my students to do, as I said before, I have to learn it singing, and I like it very much in that phase, and then I transcribe it, and then I study it. Yeah. So my second step for me, unfortunately, is to transcribe. But the best one would be to learn it by heart.
Yeah, I think, it also depends on the purpose of the transcription. So as adults now with, family and a lot of other stuff that cut time of our lives, even, I started this podcast and sometimes I transcribe solos, and I have to be honest, sometimes I just start writing the solo while I'm transcribing for the first time, because the aim for me at the moment is different. But I remember when I was young and I had a little bit more time, I was doing exactly that. And the fun fact is that I still remember the solos that I memorized like 25 years ago. I still can play it. The other day, an Italian student of mine came to get a lesson in person, because I still teach to him. Shout out to Lorenzo Baldini. And he was talking to me about a solo that I suggested to transcribe, because it was a big important milestone in my development, which is All of Me by Miles Davis Quintet in the album Round About Midnight, and I transcribed both Miles and Coltrane. And so the other day he was at my place and we were talking about that, and I tried to play it, and
you found
I could play everything. Even the Coltrane solo, all those lines, because when you memorize something, you don't memorize the theory, which takes a big part of our memory. You memorize the sound, and the sound is the pure content, of a solo. So it depends on the purpose. I interviewed people that do transcribe as a job.
You told me.
Right, so they do the transcription and then they move on to the next one. But if you are a student or if you want to improve a specific aspect, definitely the best way is to memorize everything. Even because when you memorize, it's there. It doesn't matter the media that you use. It can be your voice, it can be a MIDI keyboard, it can be a saxophone, an ocarina. You can really play it because all the lines and all the rhythms are stuck in your mind. And how do you practice the solo? So you said if you have the time, you memorize it and then you write it down. And then you said, I study the solo. So how do you practice?
I practice at the beginning. I check everything. So I play slowly and check if everything sounds good. And this is the first practice. Then I isolate some phrases I prefer for several motifs, and I practice it in all the keys. So to learn it, to make it mine. And the interesting thing is that after a while, this kind of, sometimes it happens that I change what I studied. I mean, I started from an idea, I don't know, from Pepper Adams, and I changed something to make the phrase more in my style, because recently, I mean, in the last 20 years, my model is Pepper Adams, okay? But I remember when we were together and I made my thesis about Pepper Adams, I was listening to Pepper Adams, studying music of Pepper Adams, preparing the thesis about Pepper Adams, studying solos of Pepper Adams. I didn't like the way I played in that period because I'm not as great as Pepper Adams, but it wasn't really me. It was too much Pepper Adams. Yeah. So I like also to change something. I mean, I don't think it's good to play exactly phrases of other musicians. The good thing is you have to learn it and then to forget it.
That would be copying.
Copying, yeah.
But actually, yes, you're 100% right. And again, I've talked many times about it. It's okay to use the verb to steal from other artists, but then you have to process.
Elaborate.
Yeah. And in fact, in the last episode of the transcription, I published a transcription of Michael Brecker playing over Sate over and over again. And I started the video with a snippet from an interview of Michael Brecker, and he's saying, I'm a product of my time. And I thought I was hit by that statement, because it's one of the best definition of a jazz musician I have ever heard, because we are the product of who we are, what kind of music we are surrounded by, what kind of exposure we receive every day. In these days that I'm in Italy, my kids wanted to listen all the time to the Italian radio, so we could learn.
I think this would be dangerous to listen to.
No, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. And my kids sometimes were laughing, but not because I don't want to say that Italian pop music is bad or Australian music is better. No, but the quality sometimes of the lyrics or the quality of music,
both recently,
it is not of the highest level, even though I have to say the interesting thing is that in Italian pop, even in Italian rap or Italian trap, there is always a melodic component,
I know,
which is recognizable as Italian. And this is the interesting part, because when you play music, especially if you play improvised music, you play what you are. You are the product of your time, and who else has come before you, before your time, and also the contemporary players around you, are all influences. And then you have to process all those information and, put out who you really are.
Yeah. In fact, I'd like to say, because I know that your podcast has a lot of people who listen to your podcast, and it's interesting. This is not about transcription, but it is about my experience about the fact that to be a product of your time, and a product of what you are exposed, the music you are exposed. Because I was very lucky, because I grew up in a family listening to jazz music and Brazilian music. So that was my music when I was a little kid. And then I grew up in the 70s. During the 70s, I was really, how can I say, I had this impact with the funk music and the soul music from the United States. I remember the first time I heard about Stevie Wonder. I mean, I didn't know who this guy was. And why I said I want to say this in this podcast, because I think it can be helpful. When I grew up and when I became a musician or a young man trying to be a musician, the music was in me. It was not only jazz. It was both this kind of this influence, even because then I'm Italian, so I was also exposed to the Italian melody. So I had to accept. I had to accept that my music wasn't pure jazz, wasn't pure funk, wasn't Italian music, but it was a mix of the three. When I accepted the fact that the music I composed, I was composing and I'm still composing, it is not really one kind of this, but it's a mix. I was able to start my music and to write music and to be happy to accept this fact. Yeah. I had to accept the fact that my music was not jazz, pure jazz, you know? Yeah. And for me, it was really hard because when I was a teenager, I grew up listening of Dexter Gordon, Sonny Rollins, Clifford Brown, J.J. Jones, especially hard bop. My father and my uncle, they like mainly hard bop, bebop. So, for instance, when I was a teenager, the Police were the top group. I didn't like the Police at the time, you know. Now I like it. Yeah. Now I understand it. Because I was too deep in jazz. And we don't have to be too deep in one music. We have to be deep in the music.
Yeah, I think it goes with the process of maturity. You know, when you are a kid, it's very easy to get, we say fittonate. Yes, I don't know how to translate this. But when you start being obsessed with one thing, you know, one artist, you start listening to that artist. And not necessarily is a bad thing, because you can narrow your interest and dig really deep, you know, into one stream, you know, of style or a specific instrument or a specific genre. But then with maturity, you start appreciating, also because you start connecting all the dots. You know, you start understanding how and why Coltrane in his later life went to this mystic, free, complete free kind of style, and you can understand the process that led Coltrane to there. Yeah. You know, if you start, I remember I bought John Coltrane Meditation when I was, I don't know, 16, 17, because I was told you need to listen to Coltrane. He's the greatest. And in a record shop, I found Meditation, and I put it on the player, and I thought the CD was broken. I thought there was an issue. The sound was. And I said, "What is that? Maybe it's scratched." And I could only appreciate and starting listening and understanding that album after, you know, I heard all the Lenny Tristano ones, the Ornette Coleman ones, and you start putting the puzzle together. You can't start there because it's too shocking.
I had this difficult approach to the music of Thelonious Monk. I couldn't understand him when I was young. I wasn't able to understand his music. For me, it was really a process and now I love really very, very much Thelonious Monk. But for me, his kind of jazz is not the jazz of Dexter Gordon. It's different. Yeah. So I needed time to get in this kind of music.
You make me thinking that all those artists that we mention are usually not recognized as great by the general audience of their time, even when they are alive, but they are appreciated by experienced musicians.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of the same. When you are too young, you are more a member of the general audience. You haven't developed the experience yet to appreciate a very intellectual, process or approach to music. So even Monk, all the musicians went to listen to Monk and wanted to play with him.
Yeah.
But I guess some of the general audience didn't like him because he wasn't playing in a conventional way. So you feel uncomfortable because you don't understand.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to see that people like the great innovators like Ahmad Jamal, right? And Miles Davis was going to listen to Ahmad Jamal every time he could because he recognized. But some of the audience might think, oh, this guy is playing too simple or is not as hip as, I don't know, McCoy Tyner or Wynton Kelly or, we can name.
Or the worst of this thing is when people say that Sonny Stitt is a copy of Charlie Parker. Yes. This is the worst thing that can be said about a musician. Because Sonny Stitt has a lot of personality, has a different kind of rhythm and accents and another relationship with the blues. So this is stereotypes.
Even though in some artists is of course easier to identify the source or some sources.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of Sonny Stitt, I wouldn't say it's a copy, but you can say that probably his admiration for Parker led him into stealing, from him, but then reprocessing all the language through his own words. And then
all the musicians of that period had this kind of heritage from this kind. Maybe he was. I heard, I didn't know it, that he moved to tenor saxophone. To escape. To escape. I didn't know it. This.
Yeah, sometimes can happen. And David Liebman told me about the same thing, but it was more personal. David Liebman has such an admiration for Coltrane.
Mm-hmm.
Again, almost an obsession, right? One of those things that, and I believe it because, for a saxophone player, and he told me I started playing soprano because to me the tenor was too big, a too big achievement, because the model was Coltrane, and he thought I can't get there. It's impossible. He's in the space. So maybe if I play soprano, that of course Coltrane mastered it, but it wasn't his first and primary instrument.
Mm-hmm.
Liebman said, maybe I can find my voice without having to reference all the time to this god of tenor saxophone. It's interesting.
Yes, it is.
So, Dario, of course, we can talk for hours and hours. And is there a solo that gave you a lot of troubles and headaches? So who was or which one was the most difficult solo that you transcribed and why?
Maybe it was I had a challenge with myself. Transcribing a very, very long solo of I found a solo of Pepper Adams with Bill Evans on the piano and Philly Joe Jones maybe on the drums. I don't remember. the challenge was because and they play a standard. I don't remember. I have it. I don't remember what standard. But the challenge was because the rhythmic section started running, but very fast. So they start like this, and they finish like this. But really, so this was the
was Art Blakey?
no. I think it was Philly Jones. But I don't know. I don't know why. So the challenge was to follow Pepper, who was following the rhythmic section, and at a certain point he had to stop to realize where was the rhythmic section to stay on it. And it's a live concert, so you can see also the face of Pepper that he's asking what's going on. And I think that was the most difficult, because I had to relate the time at the time that was changed. But the most, in my opinion, the difficult, every time you approach a new musician, you can find it difficult, because you have to follow the mental process of that musician, and sometimes some intervals, some ghost notes, some stuff like this can be more complicated. On the other side, the more you transcribe one musician, and the more you learn it, and the more it's easier and more it's easy to transcribe, because that's the language, his language. He uses similar phrases. Yeah. He has you already are in his mind, in the way he understands.
I remember I read in a book that is talking about training your ears to recognize that in this book, that probably could be The Primacy of the Ear by Ren Blake, the book, but I will check it out. There is written that the sound is something that you can create in your mind even when you don't hear it. And the example that the author makes is that think of the voice of your parents. You can remember exactly the voice of your parents, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can remember my mom's voice, and she died 16 years ago, but I can easily recreate it in my mind.
Yeah.
So, because I spent a few hours in the last couple of weeks transcribing Michael Brecker, I can hear the sound of Michael Brecker.
Yeah.
And that's when your ears starting to get all the patterns, even in terms of the quality of the sound, as the ears are very powerful.
Yeah.
And if you are able to train your ears in a certain way, you can speed up your process very easily.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, it's difficult. And also, in my experience, when I transcribe an instrument that I don't play, I find it way more difficult.
Yeah, that's it.
For the same reason, because I don't have the memory of the sound to help me.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I transcribe a guitar play,
also a piano for me.
I play a bit of piano, it's a piano. Even though the left hand gives me a lot of headaches, sometimes it's difficult. But to me, for example, guitar is not easy, because I don't play not even C major.
Yeah. I forgot to say this.
And
not transcribing your instrument is more difficult.
But because you haven't developed the memory of the sound.
Yeah.
You know, if you transcribe 20 guitar solos, then you start feeling, okay, maybe you can't play it, but okay, I can hear now this and that. All right, and the last question is the stupid one, to just drop the level of this interview to the ground, to the real, earth. language is what is if you are sent to a desert island and you have to choose one solo that eventually will save humanity.
To save the humanity.
Which solo you will bring because you think has the magic powers?
I think would bring. I don't know. I'm in love with Pepper Adams, so I'll bring a Pepper Adams solo, but not also probably ephemera. Ephemera is even the melody. Puda we are. There are 3 tonal center moving up for a major third. The same phrase of Pepper, and then it develops in another direction. It's beautiful. I love that song. And I heard, after a while, recently, I read somewhere that that was the songs of Pepper that he prefers. So I would keep with me that the transcription of a solo of Pepper Adams on ephemera.
Great. So guys, don't worry, if a major issue comes up in the world, there will be Dario on a desert island with Ephemera by Pepper Adams, and he's going to save
the earth.
Us all. So I need to thank you, my dearest friend Dario Cecchini from Vicchio Mugello.
Was good enough to be understood by the audience.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Okay.
All the links are in the video description. Please remember to like and subscribe to my channel.
Yeah.
And see you next time for another episode. Thank you, Dario.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.